You hear me?
All right, great. Can you hear
All
me?
right. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, yes, yes. All right. So
Uh,
my voice is clear.
yes, it is
Okay.
clear.
All right. Good. So how
All
have you
right.
been? And my apologies for last Friday.
No, no,
It
no,
was
no, no
kind of hectic.
problem.
Yeah.
I actually only remembered there was like an Easter thing, like on Thursday, and I was
Ah,
actually surprised Herman made it. But he
I
said
see.
he might not make it today, so he said he's gonna be on a trip
Oh, I
and
see. Okay.
might
All
struggle
right.
with signal. But if
Sure,
he
sure.
says if he can join, he will join.
Okay. All right. It's fine. We can start. Yeah, we can start
All
now.
right, all
All
right.
right. So
Sorry,
yeah.
my
So
camera is off. I'm using my desktop now.
okay. Sure, sure. No problem. All right. So
Share.
I hope. Yeah. Thanks. Hope you had a great weekend and that
Yes, yes.
probably give you
I
some
tried my
time to
best.
work on it. Okay, so let's start. Yeah. All right. Go
Let's
ahead.
start.
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna give like a brief update from what I the so in the last meeting I had with on Friday with Herman,
Right.
Professor Herman. Um, so I first started with like a small calculator code to sort of try to drive the test data data driven development. Sorry, what?
Test
TDD,
driven.
test
Test
data,
driven.
test driven.
Yes.
Sorry, test driven development.
Right.
Yeah. So I started with like a small calculator somewhere. I think it's closed now, but the idea was to just create, basic. What's the word? Uh, sorry, let me just quickly look for it. Just basic, subtraction, addition functions, and sort of just test them out and see how they play out, and then to sort of run a test to see if it, if it passes the test. And the idea was just to sort of familiarize myself with how it works. There was division by zero. Yeah, that's the error there. But anyways, I don't think this is very relevant. So based on that, what I learned from that, I tried to apply it to our application. So at
Okay.
first, I had initial plans to sort of create four different files: one to define the nodes, one to define the matches, and then one to define, the uh, the the sequence of events, and then one to test. But then I realized it was not going to work because the sequence of events sort of stays in the matcher and not necessarily outside the matcher. But
Mhm.
so at the
Okay.
moment now, we have the node, which is defined by three functions: the sub node, which is the sub ID and channel, the pub node, and then the I put this as just for future reference in terms of the payload. So if, for example, sub node sends a request, the idea is this handles the result. Um, this is not.
Okay. It's a
I've
callback,
not
right?
used.
It's kind of like a
Yeah, yeah,
callback.
it's like a callback exactly. But I've not used it yet. It's just there as a reference, and then so also I sort of have the matcher. I think I showed you this already. This process again, I modified it quite a bit because in the code it became quite tricky to implement that exactly. But the idea was, I was trying to develop this. I have a more detailed drawing in my book, but to sort of this I tried to build it as individual components and sort of match the what you call it, the variables together, so I don't get lost. So that's just a simple um, way to illustrate it. So if you notice here, the flow of requests is not as detailed as it should be yet, but the idea was to build sort of incrementally. So the first step, okay, so if you notice here, sorry, let me just we have the sub request. So this is what happens
Mhm.
when there's a sub request. Um, when the subscriber node, when the node wants to send a sub request, this is what happens when the node um, publishes a request, right? So maybe there's a node receives a request for publishing, and that node has it. This is the steps that it should take. And again, you will notice that it doesn't have all the minute details yet because it's
Okay.
sort of incremental build. And here you have the save to DB. So this is a future because the database, I think I would have to change this tiny database in the future.
Okay.
It's not, it doesn't give me a lot of flexibility as to searching and querying and stuff like that. But this is just there in terms of as a reference that, okay,
Yeah,
if I
that's
want
fine.
to save,
Yeah.
yeah, remove, search, and all that kind of stuff. But for now, so the idea is simple, right? So now what I did now was we have this component, and then I have the stuff, the tests generated in this file. So for example, I mean, starting here, I first created this pub list. I just created it as a reference. I didn't really use it. So the idea is there's an existing table generated by random values. Where are you? Where are you? Where did I put it? Okay, I created it somewhere here. Sub data, yeah. So the idea is when I run this for the first time. Oh yeah, sorry, I took it out. This is it. So the idea was just to create the first, maybe like 10 values or so. So if you look at this file, this is what the pub list
Okay.
looks like. Random publisher. So the idea is each publisher has its ID, its channel, and its message. Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Nice.
and for the subscriber, so after I created it once, I just sort of deleted it so that it doesn't keep adding. So now we have the subscriber node now. If you notice here, I try to create random values. So the idea is create a random ID, number below 20, create a random channel. So we have 0, 1, and 2. Channel 0, channel 1, channel 2, and then a random message. So the idea is create 5 of this, create 5 subscribers. And if I was
Okay.
to run this, for example, you will notice this are the 5 subscribers. Just to break it down here, right? You have 15, ID1, ID2, ID3, ID4, ID5, right? Perfect. So the next phase was to sort of now map these values onto the node function. So here we have subnode, for example. All right, so if I check here I initialize the node here, the class here. Where are you? So the class is initialized where, okay, I think I lost it again. Sorry. Initialize the class right here. Yes. Initialize the class and then map these values that we created. These 3 values, or in our case, because it's sub, the 2 values that were created randomly, map them onto ID and channel. Right. So it's almost like, let me show you here. The sub in the test file. Okay, I need to draw this properly. The test file has ID and channel mapped. So a test was created to make sure that it's working properly. So this is just a basic test, for example, to check if ID and channel from the sub node, which is in here. Please hold, stop me if I'm going too fast. So the ID here, check it, and then check if it's equal to what we expect. Right. And basically what we expect here should be the same, the last value in this list. So I'm still working on, I've not created the structure such that it's iterating through a list. For this basic test, I'm just checking the last value. So the idea is check if this ID and channel 9 and 1 is the same as expected sub, which is, expected sub basically is 9 and 1, and we're checking if the node in in sub node is the same. And when we run that test, basically you see it's 4 tests. The first test was successful. Maybe I should just add a small string here so we can track where do you see that? Okay, I don't see success anywhere.
Okay.
Anyways, I think I'm doing that wrong. Success. Sorry, test basic pub. I'm not sure why it's not showing that. Just hold on. Do you see success?
I see that let me see. Give me a code or I don't see how it's, yeah, I see what you're typing now, like successful
Yeah,
check. I
check.
see you're
Yeah.
typing this string, yeah.
Okay. There should be a successful check somewhere here that shows
Okay.
that it's successful. But basically, it's 4 tests:
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4. It basically works, but I don't know why it's not printing. I have to investigate that.
Okay, okay.
Right. And also, so that's to just test fine. There's also to check if the matcher receives the requests. Now, in this place, we actually matched, assigned the in the matcher now, there's this section. Sorry, wow, that's nice. There's this section that gets the values from the node, right? So the idea was to match the get the ID of the node. I mean, get the ID from the node function and sort of assign it to this function we have created, right? And once we do that, you would notice sub initialize matches sub request as. So pub initialize pub. What's going on here? This is not doing what I wanted to do. Something is off, but I don't really know what's going on. So just hold on. Matcha request sub request as. Yeah, here. Sorry. Sub initialize. Sorry, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, so the idea was, so the matcher gets its variables or the values from the node, and basically in this test the idea is, do they match? So first I want to check TMRS. T basically test matcher receives S request. Check the sub request, I mean the matcher sub request ID and channel, and also check the node, its ID and channel, and compare them. If they are equal,
Okay.
then it's successful. If they are not equal, it means something is wrong somewhere. Yeah, it should be the same value, right? Basically, repeated the same with to test for the pub as well as the test for the sub. Now, in terms of now the flow as to how the pub, or should I say the publisher, sends what do you request for where the node requests makes a subscription request, for example, and the publisher publishes so that's what is currently being built at the moment. So if you notice, that has been mapped here, for example, search database. Again, this is not working properly, and I think it's because of the database I used in terms of querying database. I think I created that. I had to sort of delete it here.
Okay.
But the idea was to sort of just check, search the query variable. So in our case, I define the query variable as 1, which is channel. And the idea is, if the channel is 1, basically get all the messages from there. Or should I say print all the messages.
Okay.
But it didn't work. So for the case of presentation for now,
Okay.
I see.
All right, that's fine. I see.
Yeah.
So let me try to understand. Were you trying to the expected results that you wanted to print out? Is it like a list of the subscription or publication?
So for me, the first most important thing was making sure the parameters are sort of going through successfully.
Okay.
Right. So for example, I have that going to the matcher, and I also have this going to the matcher. And the idea was making sure the matchers, the variables got the IDs from this was the same as what the matcher was receiving.
I see. Okay.
Once that is
Just trying to
successful,
verify what the matcher received is indeed what's
yes,
being
exactly.
sent. Is that right?
And yes, and it is receiving. So what I have done at the moment now is just do like basic checks in terms of what's the message. So now that I have the messages, the question is now what I'm going to do with the messages, and that's where now the sequence of events now sort of play a role.
Right.
For example, if there's a subscription request, send the message, receive the message, publish the message, and that kind of stuff. But the part I'm still sort of, should I say, fuzzy on, or maybe it's a bit repetitive, but Is it possible to do it such that, because each node to a certain extent has a message, it has an ID, it has a channel, and it has a
Right.
message. It's just when it's a sub request that it's only getting the ID and channel. So is it possible to do it such that there's just one function, but then in the function there's a sort of checking, like an if statement that suggests if it's a sub request, then you're just playing with a certain data type, and if it's a pub request, it's a but because this feels like it's gonna create multiple, what do you call it, um multiple identities. For example, if a pub and a sub is doing they're performing both functions at the same time, from this structure it looks like it's going to, okay, well, because I'm using random values, but it seems like it might be a problem in the future, because now you're sort of having different IDs, different channels when publishing, and something different when subscribing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Okay. Are you saying that because it's too random, you're concerned they will not match and there will not be
No, no,
a
no.
match pops up? Is that what you're
Uh,
saying?
no, I'm saying at the moment they don't match because they're random.
Right, right.
But
Because the
I
random.
don't. Yes, but at the same time, I don't know if that will be a problem in the future in terms of.
Okay. Well,
Um,
if you have too much of space, okay. So let's say you allow the random number. I don't know what's the range now, but if you allow, let's say, a range of 1 to 1,000, right?
yeah,
And you only have like 100 pops up requests,
yeah,
then it's going to be very difficult for them to match. You see,
yes,
to
okay,
overlap.
okay,
However, if you have just, let's say, 5 channels, right? Let's say the pops up the randomly created channel number is between 1 to 5, right?
yeah,
And then you try to create random numbers just within this range. Then and then you create 100, subscription, 100 publications. Then there's a good chance that they will match. You see?
oh, no, that's definitely. I mean, I think what I
Mhm.
did here was I just used two in my random with the channel check, at least the channel based. I generated random numbers for two, where you
Mhm.
for less than two, basically numbers.
Okay,
So
okay,
it's
less than 2.
zero,
I see, I
one,
see.
yeah. So it sort of works. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, okay.
It's just in a. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, and it's probably because I'm not sort of picturing it in a. But in a case where it's a dynamic system where one node is performing two different things at the same time, um, it feels like, okay, not that it feels like, I don't know yet. Maybe I have to test it first. It feels like this creates, it's almost like this functions create assign different IDs,
I
but then
see.
it makes
Okay.
sense because it's
Okay.
random.
Right, right.
But in a
Well,
real,
you have to know that this depends on what you want to do. Let's say, because I actually wouldn't use the term pub node and sub node.
okay,
Okay, the reason is that a node is a node. Okay, it's
exactly.
an entity that potentially can publish or subscribe. What
Okay.
you want is to just have the concept or the idea of a node. Okay,
Oh,
and the
okay.
node can perform both publish and
Oh,
subscribe. You see,
okay.
and even to, for example, subscribe to multiple channels or multiple areas. This should be something that like in a general or a generalized pops up application. It should always
Yeah.
be the case. You see,
Okay.
like you can just imagine if you were to build a chat room, for example, right? Then a user logs in. You don't want to restrict the user to, let's say, join only two chat rooms, right? Or even just one, right? You want the user to be able to subscribe to perhaps as many as 100, 500 channels. You
Yeah.
see, that's what you want to do, but it's still the same node, right? You don't really create, let's say, for each subscription, you create a new subscription node for that user.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean that's just I mean, although in theory you can do that. Okay. In object oriented, you can definitely use a subnode, right, to manage a subscription, for example. But I think it makes more sense to just define the node as a individual entity, and then subscribe and publish. They are more like behaviors, actions.
Behavior.
You see,
Yes. Yes,
right? And instead of they are a subnode or a pub node. Okay. And in that sense, I think this mimics better the actual real world application. Right? Just think of like a user or a device. You probably don't want to have to assign a new subscription ID, right? Or a
Mm.
publication
Yeah,
ID
exactly.
for every single publication request, right? It doesn't really make sense.
Exactly.
You see?
Yeah,
So
that's what.
that is why I think the concept of pub node or subnode, I mean, you can put that like a pub request or a sub request. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
Like
I
a
think
publication request or a subscription request.
I'm the one confusing myself with
Right.
this.
But it's not the concept of a pub node or a sub node.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. That does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Okay. All right. So okay. So I think it's good. Okay. That you basically now have a I think you already have a way. I can see that you already have different modules, like the behavior generation module. I see that that's kind of in place now. And you also have a way to you separate that into the matcher logic, right? I think you
Yeah.
already have the matcher logic and also the pub node, sub node. Although I would suggest to combine them into just a node with a publish and a subscribe behavior.
Okay.
Okay, kind of like, and obviously you will need to manage different data structure. To answer your question, where you get confused, or become too complicated if you are, having multiple publish or subscription. I think, well, if publication and subscription actually can be managed fairly independently.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, because logically they are different things. It's
Yes.
just that the publisher or the subscriber, it could be the same node with the same node ID.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And again, I think for practical purpose, I do feel that for most scenarios, you probably want to just have like one unique node ID to identify the node.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might, if you like, you might to put like a request ID, okay, like a subscription ID or publication ID in front of that. Although I don't see that as absolutely necessary.
Okay.
You see, because to identify usually particular identify a request, it's the request itself is enough usually. I
Okay.
think. Okay. All right. I think this is getting a bit more detailed. Um, and obviously there are many different ways to do this. Okay, and many different valid ways. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Okay, but I think the important part to note is building the behavior model. Okay, and then
Yes.
make sure that the behavior models, what you created there, it can be read. It can be generated. It can be read. It can be sent
Mm.
out as requests, and
Yeah.
it, sort of in a reproducible manner.
Mm.
Okay, I think those are the important things.
Yeah.
Okay, so for next step, I think actually that will be tomorrow. Okay,
Tomorrow. Yes.
yeah,
Exactly.
because I think we will try to experiment with 3 days to make
Okay.
up for
Yeah.
last week.
No problem.
And so for tomorrow, what I would like to see is, the I think you already have the match logic. Okay, just try to debug. Okay, and make sure that you can, let's say, print out like
Yeah.
all the subscription requests, the publication requests as the simulator runs.
Okay.
Okay, and if possible, just also print out what the matcher is receiving,
Yeah.
what the matcher is receiving and whether, the matcher can in fact perform the correct matching.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can just run a very, very simple simulation where you have like maybe like 5 nodes, each subscribing to a different channel, right? It can be zero, you can do it as 0, 1, and then publish 5 messages to again randomly chosen channels, and see if on the matcher side it can actually perform the correct match,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. Okay.
Yeah. So that's I think what you want to do. And after, I think the important part is after the behavior generation, the main program that you do actually runs a main loop, kind of like a main loop in games, where
Yeah.
you will take the behavior models as input and then start to feed or allow the nodes to act accordingly.
Yes.
Okay, whether it's a publish or a subscribe action. Okay,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Yes.
Okay, all right, yeah. So, all right, so I guess any other questions or any difficulties?
Yeah.
You
I
feel
think you actually answered my most important question in like the last part, which was the main loop. So I mean, I was gonna ask if I should put the main loop in this test node, such that the main
okay.
loop is sort of running with the the tests
With
sort of
the
show.
definition, okay,
Yeah.
with the test. I think for now it's fine. Okay, because if you just want to keep everything like in the same place and be able to reference it easily, but
Okay.
definitely I think at some time when this grows bigger, you want to probably keep the main loop in a separate file. I mean,
Okay.
in terms of, because remember, this is all different aspects or components, right? You have the
Yeah.
main loop, you have the behavior generator, right? That's one. You have the client side logic, okay, which
Yeah.
is how a node performs publish and subscribe request. You have the the matcher logic, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the main loop that is just feeding the behavior model into the client side logic, right?
Yeah.
For it to execute by the matcher or server side,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
you also have a network layer, right? So those are,
Yes.
remember, those are the main components.
Connect.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm
So that makes
seeing
sense.
the light. Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. So I guess any other questions?
For now, I
Okay.
think I'm fine. I struggled initially with the test driven development. I'm sort of, the more I work with it, the more I'm sort of seeing how to debug and find spots.
Okay.
But I am
Okay.
able to print out it's just I need to make it a bit more user friendly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because, for
Okay.
example, this is from the matcher.
Mm-hmm.
This is from the matcher.
Okay.
This is a message from the matcher that it's receiving the pop data as that, and
Right.
that is the pop data.
Mm-hmm.
So showing that it's accurate, basically, that they're the same thing. So
Okay.
they are connected, at least in terms of the components. They are working.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing the right thing. Now it's the logic that sort of is the most important part.
Mm-hmm.
Logic and with the right database, the right
Mm.
database,
Okay.
the
All
right
right.
basically data structuring, and
Okay.
that's what's next. Yeah,
Okay. All right. So I'll talk to you tomorrow then. All right.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. The same time. All right. So good luck. Yeah. Good luck.
Thank
And
you.
thanks. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Shinyan.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Take care. Yeah. Bye bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.